Welcome to Magic Beyond the Books and Happy Christmas. I'm Renee, and today I am talking about the Christmas scene from Book 1. Warning, there are Harry Potter spoilers from all the books in this episode. So first, identifying this scene. So this is from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or if you read it as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, it's chapter 12, The Mirror of Erised. And I'm just going to be talking about the Christmas Day part. So it's not the whole chapter. It's only pages 200 to 209. Or if you're listening to the audiobook, it's about 9.5 minutes into the chapter, which is chapter 12, through about 27 minutes into the chapter. And that's going to vary a little bit depending on which audiobook you're listening to, but it's somewhere around there. So quick summary. Harry and the Weasley boys stay at Hogwarts to celebrate Christmas. They eat and play in the snow, and Harry receives a mysterious gift that connects him with his family. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about Harry's presents first. So Harry actually gets presents this year, which is to much his amazement. And the ones we learn about, I'm not sure if he gets more, but I'm not sure. It doesn't say anything about him getting a gift from Ron. So I'm not sure if there's a couple more, but these are the ones that are listed. So first from Hagrid, it says he got him a wooden flute that he, meaning Hagrid, whittled himself, and it sounds like an owl when played. Harry later uses this flute on Fluffy, the three-headed dog, to put the dog to sleep. So this comes back around. From Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, they get him a 50 pence piece. And Ron is amazed by this, and Harry gives it to him because Ron is not accustomed to muggle money. And I'm also not accustomed to muggle money, at least the British kind, because I'm in the States. So I went into a little bit of a deep dive on the 50 pence piece. So if you're in the United States like me, 50 pence is going to be equal to somewhere around 60 cents to $1 US dollar terms. And this is in 1991 that this scene is happening. So I think the value would have been 67 cents-ish at the time. So 50 pence. It was first issued in 1969 to replace the Bank of England 10 shilling note. The 10 shilling note was too expensive to maintain, so this was a cheaper alternative. The current 50 pence piece is a resized version of the original. The original version was larger. So the original was 30 millimeters, whereas the one now that you'll see today is 27.3 millimeters. And it changed to be smaller in 1998. But this scene that we're talking about in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is happening in 1991. So this 50 pence that Harry receives should be the larger one. The 50 pence piece is 7-sided around the edges, and it features the reigning monarch on the head side, and then on the tail side, it originally featured a seated Britannia with the lion, but then there's different commemorative designs that now exist today. So there might be something different on a coin if you get one. But that's my deep dive on 50 pence. And that's what Petunia and Vernon considered a good Christmas present for Harry. Now, Molly Weasley got Harry a Weasley sweater. It's a hand-knitted emerald green one, and his has no letter on it, so there's not an H on it, whereas the other Weasley children have the first letter of their name on their sweaters. And then they seem to get the same color every year, I guess, because Ron talks about he gets maroon every time. But anyway, Harry's is emerald green to match his eyes, and Molly also gets him some fudge. Then Hermione gets Harry a large box of chocolate frogs, and she also gave a box of every flavor beans to Ron for reference. So she got both of them candy. And then from Dumbledore, which Harry doesn't know this, because Dumbledore gives this anonymously, so he doesn't find out till later. But Dumbledore gives Harry his father's invisibility cloak with a note saying to use it well. So that concludes the Christmas presents that Harry receives. let's go through the decorations in the Great Hall for Christmas. So there's festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the hall. There's 12 towering Christmas trees stood all around the room, and they're each decorated in a unique way. So like some have are sparkling with icicles, some are decorated with candles. So you're getting kind of these different, like some might have ornaments. So 12 different individually decorated trees, which is crazy. That's a ton of work to do. And they're real trees. So Hagrid had to bring them in for this. And that's all we get as far as the decorations. Now let's talk about the food. So on Christmas Day, they do a big feast for their Christmas lunch. And at this feast, they have 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of chipolatas. And I didn't know what chipolatas were, so I'm sure there's some people that maybe don't. It's a type of small sausage that usually contains minced pork, maybe chicken. So basically sausage, because apparently like British people are obsessed with sausages, I guess. I don't know why there's always sausages keep coming up in their diet. Then there's tureens of buttered peas, so ginormous platters and bowls and things. There's a lot of food. Silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce. And I believe this would probably be, I think with like as far as English food, this would be like a brown gravy. I don't think they have like white gravy like they have in the States. And then cranberry sauce, and then they have stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table, which are, I guess that's not really food, but the little like cracker things. And then wine for professors, and then flaming Christmas puddings with silver sickles inside, which when I'm reading all of this, a lot of this is very different because I live in the States, so we don't really adhere to all these like traditional British food. And I assumed that flaming Christmas puddings with silver sickles inside must be like more of a magical world Harry Potter thing, but it's not. So apparently flaming Christmas puddings is a thing. You can do this in real life, where I guess you get alcohol and you light it on fire and then pour it all over the pudding. If you're going to try this at home, probably look up a recipe and make sure you're doing it right so you don't like set your house on fire. But you can technically do this at home. And also putting stuff inside Christmas puddings is another, traditional real world thing. People would put coins and rings and other things in to their Christmas puddings. I think it's maybe not so common anymore because of like safety concerns, but those things, if you have the piece that like you find that it's supposed to, bring you luck or wealth. So for example, a silver coin that's supposed to bring you wealth and luck for the next year. But if you find a ring, that means you're going to get married in the coming year. And then a thimble is supposed to be a symbol of thrift or also of spinsterhood, specifically for women. So I don't know, do with that what you will. It really makes me think of like Mardi Gras cakes. My mom used to buy these from the store. You would get these like cakes, and then there would be a little plastic baby inside. And then the person that like had the piece with the baby, I guess it was like good luck, or you were the one that was going to get the cake next year, or whatever the thing was. So write in and tell me if I'm not the only one that ate these Mardi Gras cakes with the like fake plastic baby in them. But the Christmas puddings with the coins in them made me think of that. So anyway, that concludes the food that they have at their Christmas feast. But let's go through the timeline of the scene. So Harry wakes up, it's Christmas morning, and he sees a small pile of packages and is just shocked that he has presents. And Ron has a pile too that is larger than Harry's. And I think this is important to note for all the people that act like Ron always gets the short end of the stick. I think he doesn't actually, but anyway. So Harry's telling Ron, oh my gosh, I have presents. And then Ron says, what did you expect? Turnips? And the two just launch into opening their presents. They're the only two that are from their dorm. So Seamus, Dean, and Neville are all gone home for the holidays. So they're able to have this space to themselves to open up their presents. And Harry, when he opens up the invisibility cloak, and the note explains that it was his father's, but it doesn't tell him that it's from Dumbledore. They're both amazed by this. They're checking, Harry's putting it on and looking in the mirror. And Ron has, of course, heard of invisibility cloaks being from the wizarding world. And Harry is very kind of like interested in this gift, but it's like you're in the middle of this thing. You can't really like appreciate or think about this too much in the moment. Because right then, Fred and George come in. So Harry just kind of quickly hides the cloak and puts that aside till later. We'll come back to that. And Fred and George notice that Harry also got a Weasley sweater. And this is my favorite quote from the scene. So they're talking about his sweater. And George says, "You haven't got a letter on yours. I suppose she thinks you don't forget your name. But we're not stupid. We know we're called Gret and Forge." So the twins all love these sweaters, apparently. They convince Ron to put on his sweater, and Ron complains about how he hates maroon. I also think maroon is probably not the best color for like a redheaded person. But anyway, that's besides the point. So Percy comes into the twins, force his sweater over his head, and then the three of them leave the room. And later they all go down for Christmas lunch in the Great Hall. So the Weasleys, so Percy, Fred and George and Ron, and then Harry. And in the Great Hall, they're playing with the party favors. So the party favors, those Christmas crackers I mentioned earlier, they're kind of sprinkled throughout, like in piles throughout the table. And Harry notes that they aren't like the muggle ones that make a bang sound and have the little plastic toys and like the flimsy paper hats. They're a little bit more elaborate. But before I go into the wizard Christmas crackers, I had to go into Christmas crackers. So first of all, if you live in the States and you like get Christmas like this is something has been unheard of for me. I've never had any Christmas experience where people had Christmas crackers. I don't know if it's a big thing in any part of the United States. But like crackers to us mean like a snack thing that you put cheese on. Like Christmas crackers is just like a mystery to me. So I had to go into this. So they were invented in the 1840s by a London confectioner named Tom Smith. And initially, it was a way to sell sweets in a twisted tissue paper wrap that was inspired by French bonbons. The loud bang, I guess, so when you open it, it makes a loud bang. That was added later, and that bang was inspired by like the sound of a crackling fire. And the way that they get the bang is from a friction-activated snap. Tom, who invented these, expanded the cracker to include small toys, riddles, paper crowns. His son took over the business or sons took over the business and then expanded it into a range of gifts that you can get inside of them. So for this podcast, the things I do for this podcast, I ordered Christmas crackers so I can experience what this is. I think I accidentally ordered ones that don't have the bang, but I'm going to go ahead and open it on the podcast anyway, and I'll tell you about it. So if you can hear this, so it's a little like tube, and then it has ribbons and two little open ends that I guess I pull. And the one that I ordered is like a red plaid with red ribbons, but I think they come in all different looks. So I'm going to try to open this. Oh, okay. So I don't know. I think a piece like flew off, but all right. So I'm opening this. It looks like it has a little like Q&A card thing. Like maybe it's a joke. And then there's this little folded paper crown that has like a shiny side, and it looks like kind of like a crown for like a king. But yeah, so that's interesting. All right, here's the card that was inside. What do snowmen eat for lunch? Iceburgers. All right. Well, that's that. So that is my first experience with a Christmas cracker. I'll have to save the rest of these. It came in a pouch with multiple, so I'll save the rest of these and have them for my actual Christmas. But write in and let us know if you open Christmas crackers on Christmas. So getting back into the scene, Harry and Fred pull a wizard cracker, which are a little bit different than the Muggle version. They say it blasts like a cannon and covers everyone in a cloud of blue smoke. And from the inside appears an admiral's hat and several live white mice. And later, the white mice disappear, and Harry thinks that Mrs. Norris is going to eat them. So, okay, a little bit of animal cruelty here. Dumbledore swaps his pointed wizard hat for a flowered bonnet that probably came from one of these crackers. And then they talk about Flitwick reading off a joke card to Dumbledore. So I guess they all have like joke cards or trivia cards in them. I guess that's part of it too. Anyway, we're learning so much about Christmas crackers today, people. But I think that's all for them. So Hagrid gets drunk off of the wine and he kisses McGonagall on the cheek. And she just giggles and blushes, and her top hat is lopsided. So it seems like all the professors are getting a little tipsy at this Christmas lunch. And Harry starts kind of collecting up some of the stuff from the crackers that he got. So he leaves with a wizard chess set, a grow your own warts kit, a package of non-explodable luminous balloons, and I think that's it. And then I think Ron leaves with a few things. The Weasleys and Harry have a snowball fight outside that afternoon. And then when they're tired out from that, they all go back to sit by the fire in the Gryffindor common room. And Harry and Ron play chess with Harry's new set. Harry notes that he loses spectacularly to Ron after taking advice from Percy. So Harry's playing Percy, but I think in general, we're getting a lot of hints about wizard chess. Earlier, I think it was Christmas Eve or a couple days before Christmas, Ron teaches Harry wizard chess for the first time. And now we're getting a couple games throughout the story showing that Ron has an exceptional talent at wizard chess, which of course we know is going to come up later in this book. So we're getting our little hints now. But the group, meaning the Weasleys and Harry, they eat a dinner of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake. And it doesn't really specify. I'm thinking like they're just doing this in the common room. So I feel like my experience with Christmas is there's usually like a big Christmas dinner, but I guess maybe for some people it's more tradition to like have a big lunch and then you kind of just eat the leftovers afterwards for dinner. Because that seems to be kind of what's happening here. Like maybe house elves are bringing it to the common rooms. Because there's not supposed to be a ton of people left at the castle. So it's probably not really a lot of kids to be doing like two big meals. But Percy chases the twins around when they play keep away with his prefect's badge. So they're just having a nice little, like, playing their games, messing around in the common room. And I just have to say, the entire Weasley family are my heroes of the scene for this scene. I think they just like make Harry's Christmas. Otherwise, he would have been like in the Gryffindor common room in Gryffindor dormitory alone if they weren't there. And, Molly gives Harry a present and the boys just like make the day fun, playing like having snowball fights. They all wear their sweaters. So I just think it's so cute. And I think like this is the beginnings of the Weasleys really feeling like home for Harry. But after all the boys mess around, they have the dinner, they're all full and happy from their day. Ron falls asleep and Harry gets into bed. And this is now his first kind of opportunity to be alone and to think about this invisibility cloak. So he pulls it out and he's just kind of thinking about it. He is feeling very curious about it and thinking like, oh, how am I going to use this? And he just has this overwhelming urge to just like put it on and go explore the castle. He's like, it's dawning on him like, oh, I can just like go anywhere I want. I can be invisible. So he slips on the cloak and then he, heads out of the portrait hole and at first he doesn't really know where he's going. And then he thinks, okay, let me go to the restricted section of the library because this is at the point in the story where the trio is trying to find out who Nicholas Flamel is. They know he has something to do with the Philosopher's Stone. And so Harry thinks, great, like I don't need a signed permission form from a teacher to go in the restricted section. I'll just go. So he lights a lamp and he's got like his hand out with the lamp. And they do this really well in the movie. It's very much like, it pretty much matches what happens in the book to the movie. But Harry has this lit lamp and he's, going through. He looks through the books and he's in the restricted section and he hears a faint whispering from the books. And one book looks like it's covered in blood, and he picks up another book and he opens it and that book starts screaming. And so Harry panics and puts the book back where it was, but he knocked over his lamp and then he just tries to make a run for it. He runs past Filch and just runs for a while until he hits a spot. He's in this random corridor by a suit of armor and he's trying to like figure out where he is, get his bearings. And then he overhears a conversation. So Filch has caught up. Filch must know like a secret passageway to make a shortcut because he's made it to the same place that Harry was. And he's telling Snape, hey, I know that you told me to tell you if anyone was out of bed, and there's someone that's been in the restricted section, which makes sense on a reread, knowing that Dumbledore asked Snape to keep an eye on Quirrell. So Snape is having Filch like report anyone out of bed at night to him. So the two of them go and like walk away, but I guess I should note here so that this is a key movie difference. So in the movie, Harry's running from Filch and he runs into Snape talking to Quirrell, and Snape's kind of threatening Quirrell in that moment. And then Filch walks up and says that someone's out of bed and joins the conversation. So it's the three of them plus Harry watching. This is where it gets a little bit confusing because the book, I want to say that's not part of the book because it's definitely not part of the scene, but it's like they took another scene and kind of meshed it with this one, because there is a scene in the book that gets left out of the movies where Snape is interrogating Quirrell in the Forbidden Forest and Harry overhears them when he's flying around on his broom. So it's like they just kind of removed that scene and then just put this conversation between Quirrell and Snape in this moment when they did the movie to kind of like shorten it up. But anyway, back to the book story. So Snape and Filch are going to walk by him and he needs to hide. So he just kind of like goes into a random room to hide from them. And in the books, the way this room is described, it's like an unused classroom with just a bunch of items stored in it. There's a Harry Potter puzzle that does a really good job of illustrating this, and I'll share a picture on our Instagram, where it's just like this room with a bunch of like random objects, and then the mirror's just like set in there, like it was just kind of put in there for a moment. Whereas in the movie, it's like there's nothing in the room basically, and then there's this giant mirror, like it's like the only thing you can see. But so the book, Harry goes, he notices the mirror and he says it's an ornate mirror standing on two clawed feet. And it has the inscription Eris stra eru oit ub kafru oit on wosi. And those words seem like they mean nothing, or you might be thinking like maybe that's Latin or something, but it's actually just words written backwards. So the words are, I show not your face, but your heart's desire. So it just explains what the mirror is, basically. And, we later learn in a separate scene, we learn from Dumbledore that the Mirror of Erised shows the person their deepest desire. So Harry goes in the front of the mirror because he wants to see how he looks again, where he can't see himself with the invisibility cloak, but he actually does end up seeing himself. So when he steps in front of the mirror, he sees himself, and then he sees a crowd of people behind him, and he notes it's at least 10 other people. This is another difference from the movie and the book. In the movie, it's just two people. It's just his parents. But in the book, it's about 10 or more people that he sees. And at first, he thinks the people, maybe the trick of this mirror is that it shows invisible people, and there's just a bunch of invisible people in this room with him. But he reaches out behind him, and he can't feel anyone. So he kind of comes to the conclusion like, okay, this mirror is just like these people other than me are not actually in the room. And he starts to take in the people. So he first notices a woman behind him that's waving at him. And she has the same eyes as him and she's crying. And then a man puts his arm around her and he has untidy hair and looks very much like Harry. So he puts together that this must be his mom and dad, even though he's never like seen any pictures of them or anything, just based on their look. And then he kind of scans the rest of the people in this mirror room, if you will. He notes that they share a lot of his features, like some people have his eyes or his nose, or there's an old man with his knobbly knees. And he puts it together that this must be not just his mom and dad, but his family that are all in the mirror with him. And, he feels joy about this, but also sadness. And he's just kind of trying to be as close to the mirror as possible, just taking all the people in, looking at everyone. They don't talk to him. They don't really do anything other than just look at him, and he looks back. And he doesn't know how long he's just sitting there staring into this mirror, but eventually there's a distant noise that startles him, and he kind of realizes where he is, and he goes back to his room for the rest of the night. And that story of the mirror is going to continue on in different scenes. I'm not going to get too much into that. But that's kind of how we wrap Christmas Day for Harry. But I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go into the Potter family history, since we are getting a bunch of Potters in this mirror. So the Potter family is not one of the so-called Sacred 28 families that are the pureblood families. They were excluded because of their open support of muggles. But despite that, the Potter family is a very old wizarding family name. So Potter is an occupational name for muggles, for people who create pottery. But the wizarding family of the Potters descends from the 12th century wizard Linfred of I don't know how to say it, Stinchcombe. So Linfred was a locally well-beloved and eccentric man. He was described as vague and absent-minded person. The Muggle neighbors of his thought him to be a harmless, lovable guy who pottered around in his garden with all his funny plants. And also, he was able to heal all these Muggles' medical ailments. And they didn't realize that he was a wizard. They just thought, he's this medical guy who's just this lovable guy who kind of potters around, But Linfred's nickname was the Potterer from that description of him. And then Potterer over the years kind of got changed to Potter. So behind closed doors, though, Linfred was actually conducting a bunch of experiments to create a number of remedies that then evolved into potions that actually get used to this day. So a couple of the potions that he actually created were the Skele-Gro potion and the Pepper Up potion. And those, it's interesting because those are both actually used by Harry throughout his time in Hogwarts. And because of the sales of these cures that Linfred was making, Linfred actually left a lot of gold to each of his 7 kids after he died. And his eldest son was named Hardwin. So Hardwin married a witch named Iolanthe Peveril, who came from Godric's Hollow. So Iolanthe was from the Peveril family. So that's where we get Harry's connection to the Peverils, because we know that he's descended from them. So Iolanthe marries Hardwin, and Iolanthe is the she's the granddaughter of Ignatius Peveril. So the story of the 3 brothers, Ignatius is the one that has the invisibility cloak. So not his son, but his son's daughter is the one that marries into the Potter family. Because there were no male heirs, she's the one that actually inherits the invisibility cloak. So it passes from father to son and then son to daughter. And she decides to tell her husband, Hardwin, about the cloak, and they continue to keep it a family secret. And then from there, the cloak was just passed down to the firstborn of each new generation. The Potters continued to, marry their neighbors. Occasionally those neighbors were muggles, and they lived in the west of England. they worked hard and added to the family fortunes. And some Potters lived in London. Ralston Potter and Henry Potter are two that both sat on the Wizengamot during each of their times. And they both supported administration that helped muggles. And then Flomont Potter is the one that creates the magical Sleek Easy's hair potion. And the quote is, 2 drops tames even the most bothersome Barnet. So Flomont or Fleamont, however you say it, Fleamont, this hair potion, Sleek Easy's hair potion, quadrupled the family's gold. And then he sold the company when he retired and, got a vast profit from that. And it seemed like he was just going to die with a bunch of gold. Him and his wife were struggling to have a child. It seemed like unlikely that they were going to have a kid. But they actually did eventually have one son. So their son of Fleamont and his wife, which is Euphema, their son's name was James Potter. So Fleamont and Euphema lived to see James marry Lily, but they died before their grandson was born, which is Harry Potter. So, and for the record, they died of dragonpox within a few days of each other. So I'm guessing that maybe Fleamont was the old man with the knobbly knees, or this couple, which would be Harry's grandparents, were probably some of the people in the mirror. Maybe some of these other Potters from the older generations were there as well. But yeah, that concludes my little summary of the history of the Potter family. So let's get into a little discussion and theories. So first discussion question is, what is your favorite Christmas tradition? I'll talk about mine. So my family tradition that we do is hiding a Christmas pickle in our Christmas tree. I know we're not the only ones that do it, but I don't know if I personally know anyone that does it. And I'm not even sure why we started doing it. But basically, the concept is, this tradition is, parents will hide a pickle or a pickle ornament somewhere in their Christmas tree. And then Christmas Day, the kids wake up and they'll search for the ornament, and whoever finds it, they maybe get an extra gift, or maybe they get to be the first to open a present. There's some kind of reward for that. The way I do it with my family now is, my husband and I will take turns hiding it, and then we'll just kind of find it for each other. There's not really a reward for it, but we do it anyway. Maybe we'll in the future start doing a extra present or something. But finding the Christmas pickle is also believed to bring good fortune, resilience, and blessings for the new year to come. And I've heard of this being a German tradition, and both my husband and my families have German roots, so I thought maybe that's where we get it. So I looked into it and I found a lot of interesting things. So first of all, the origins of the Christmas pickle are unknown. We can kind of make guesses as to where it comes from, and tell me if you've heard different theories. But some think that it's a German legend. Like I said, I thought this was always associated with Germany in some way, but the idea that it's a German legend comes from a German American Civil War soldier supposedly was starving in a prison camp, and the guard gave him a pickle, which saved his life. And then upon returning home, he started this tradition of hiding the Christmas pickle. So not really sure how it makes a jump from that to Christmas, but that could be an origin. Another story is that 2 Spanish boys were traveling back home for the holidays, and they stopped at an inn. And then the evil innkeeper killed them and put their bodies in a pickle barrel. And then when St. Nick happened upon the inn, he found the boys and magically brought them back to life by tapping his cane onto the pickle barrel. And then I guess it became a tradition from that story. So that one's a little bit more linked to Christmas, but very dark. What's a more plausible theory is that it's an American marketing ploy. So there's the whole thing being a marketing tactic by Woolworths in the 1880s to sell German imported glass ornaments. the story was a way to boost sales of their less popular vegetable ornaments. So possibly it's from that. What kind of goes to support that idea that it's a more of an American tradition is that even though it's called a German tradition, most Germans are unfamiliar with this practice of hiding the Christmas pickle. There was a survey done by YouGov in 2016, and that survey found out that 91% of the Germans surveyed did not know about pickle ornaments, and only 2% of Germans practice the tradition. So it seems like it's more popular in the United States, even though it doesn't seem I don't know if I would say maybe more popular, but not popular. Like I don't even know if I know anyone that does it. And like I said, I don't even know where it came from with my family. But I did find that in Berrien Springs, Michigan, apparently that's the like pickle capital of the world, or maybe the Christmas pickle capital of the world. They used to hold a Christmas pickle festival every year. This was back in like the 90s to the early 2000s. And the pickle festival had a parade, a pickle pageant, a pickle tossing competition, and a pickle eating contest. So that's what I could find about the Christmas pickle tradition. Tell me if you celebrate this. I would love to know. And if you don't, you can always buy a Christmas pickle and make this part of your Christmas traditions. All right, let's get more into some of the theories and questions from Harry Potter fans in relation to this scene. This is the first theory. So, Hogwarts observes Christmas to keep school breaks aligned with the muggle world, preventing suspicion from society. My response to this theory is like, yeah, sure. But it also seems like they do celebrate Christmas as well. So I don't think they're like holding the break for a holiday they don't celebrate really. So, but yeah, I guess like their breaks, I guess we don't really know because we don't really get like a side by side comparison of Dudley's breaks versus Harry's breaks. They definitely have the same summer break, but I'm not really sure if like Dudley's going back for Easter and for Christmas and all the other things, or if he's staying at school, or like what is Dudley doing for the rest of the year? I'm not really sure. The next like question is, do wizards celebrate Christmas as a secular tradition like secular muggles? I would say it seems so. I think this is going to be really confusing for people who celebrate Christmas as a religious holiday. There are many people who don't. Like I can think in, at least in the United States, it's pretty common to celebrate Christmas regardless of your religious beliefs. So for people that celebrate Christmas that's not a religious holiday, it still involves like opening presents and having a Christmas tree and maybe singing Christmas carols and, you know, seeing Christmas tree lightings. And you might still have the tradition of like Santa Claus and the reindeer, but there's just not like an angel on your tree and you're not going to church on Christmas Day. So, I can see that. Like, I know that Christmas is not necessarily a religious holiday for everyone. And I would imagine it's the same for wizards. It doesn't, like, when we're getting the descriptions of Christmas in Harry Potter, it doesn't have a religious connotation. They're not going to church. They're not really talking about Jesus or anything. So I'm assuming that, yes, they do celebrate this as a secular tradition. Next theory is that Father Christmas, or whatever you call him, is a wizard. And the things that he does, he uses flu powder to travel. He uses a time turner for his deliveries, and perhaps even the Philosopher's Stone to be immortal. You know, I think they do have they do talk about Father Christmas in Harry Potter. It would seem like his feats would be not very impressive to them when they have these explanations for them. So, sure, we'll say that Father Christmas is a wizard. So this is an interesting theory. It's that the Dursley gifts to Harry over the years, I think it's books 1, 2, and 4, are representations of the Deathly Hallows. So this Christmas in book 1, they get him a 50 pence piece. So that's supposed to represent the resurrection stone. Then they get him a toothpick that would represent the Elder Wand. And then finally they get him a tissue, which would represent the invisibility cloak. I mean, this is an interesting theory, and it is interesting that all of their objects kind of sort of match. Obviously, I don't think the Dursleys know about the Deathly Hallows, and I'm not really sure that J.K. Rowling did this intentionally. It seems like it might just be kind of random, and then people are just like looking for parallels. Uh, so yeah. And then the last theory is it's on the harrypotter.com website, and I'll share a link on our Instagram. But it's theorizing, could any of the characters that we know from Harry Potter actually be Santa Claus? So it talks about Dumbledore and Hagrid, maybe even Vernon Dursley. I personally don't think that anyone that we know from the Harry Potter universe is actually secretly Santa Claus. So I'm going to say no to that theory. But that pretty much wraps it for this episode. So thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And next week, we'll be discussing Sybil Trelawney. Until then, happy reading, happy listening, and may you receive all the sweaters you desire this Christmas.